what is clear at this hour is there is a lot of renewed talk, once again, about a possible recession setting in. What is not clear right now is how the Trump administration can stave one off if Trump's trade war drags on, and also not clear exactly what the president himself thinks about the risk. His words, who knows? Investors right now do not seem satisfied with that answer. U.S. stock futures are down this morning as we stand by for markets to open this hour. I want to play for you what Trump said about this.
But are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. Of course you hesitate. Who knows? All I know is this. We're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch.
One thing also to watch is that the president is injecting new and more uncertainty into the economy, now warning that tariffs against Mexico and Canada, quote, could go up. That is right after he pumped the brakes on some of those tariffs just last week. CNN's Elena Treen at the White House joining us right now. And Elena, I understand the president's top economic advisor just spoke. You're able to hear from him. What did he say?
That's right. He said a lot of things, actually, and I was able to catch up with him, Kate, this morning here at the White House as well following that. First of all, he tried to argue that some of the uncertainty in the market, a lot of the uncertainty around trade policy and tariff policy is going to be offset by other economic priorities, like the tax cuts that are being proposed in this current spending bill. Of course, we have to see how that goes, and if there is a shutdown on Friday, that will only thrust the economy into more uncertainty. But he also argued and acknowledged that people are concerned about these tariffs, but he again said that he believes it would be temporary. Take a listen to how he put it.
People are anxious about future tariffs, and so they're stockpiling. And so that's a very, very temporary phenomenon.
So that's very similar rhetoric, Kate, to what we've heard the president say. Look, I mean, it is very different from also the rhetoric I think that we're used to as someone who's covered the president over the past few years. He's often overly optimistic, uses a lot of hyperbole, but he's been very open about saying there is going to be some short-term disturbances because of these tariff policies. And I think the stop and start nature of it, of course, as well, the having them be imposed, then taking a 1-month pause, imposing them again, then giving some exceptions for another month and saying they're going to go into effect on April 2nd. All of that is kind of whiplash we are seeing affected in the stock market. But again, we heard the president say, don't pay too much attention to the stock market. He says that, he admires the way that China has a 100-year outlook. He thinks that the United States needs to be more long-term and allow for the markets and Americans really to be patient. But I did find it very striking that he twice did not rule out higher prices at a time when so many Americans are concerned about their wallets, about inflation, and then also, of course, wouldn't rule out a potential recession. Now, one thing that's very clear from all of this is that he's really testing, and I think the Trump administration overall is doing this, testing the resiliency of the economy. And again, trying to look really far ahead rather than in the short term. But all of that we're still seeing. In the meantime, the market's really reacting to this. As you mentioned, stock futures down, and a lot of people concerned about what that could mean. And economists as well warning that in the next 12 months, if we don't see things change, there could be a recession, or as many people are concerned about, stagflation as well, Kate.
Yeah, Elena, thank you so much from the White House for us. Sarah?
All right, with us now to discuss more, Democratic strategist and CNN political commentator Maria Cardona, and also former Republican strategist and pollster Lee Carter. Lee, first to you. Donald Trump inherited an economy that was, by almost all accounts, on the rise, but prices were still high. Just 2 months, as we're looking at this, just a month in, he's not ruling out a recession after his decision to put tariffs in place. So can you explain how this could be a good thing for the American people, Lee?
Well, I think that there's a lot of people who do believe that the system is unfair. A lot of people out there believe that it shouldn't be that we're paying more tariffs on than our trading partners are, and a lot of people are willing to go the distance. Now, when you look at the polling on tariffs, they're not wildly popular. Only a third of Americans say that
they're
they
unpopular.
support tariffs.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you've got 43% of Americans who say they're not sure, and they're willing to take a moment to see what's going to happen. Many people support the idea of getting things back in balance and getting things fair, and fighting back a little bit. Now, How long are they willing to do that? I'm not so sure. The prices aren't coming down, and I know that's one of the number one mandates of this president. We're seeing his poll slip just a little bit, but I am seeing the American voters still saying they're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and see what he's going to do.
Maria, the United Auto Workers Union's leadership says it supports Trump's tariffs because the free trade agreement did not create the jobs they argue in America. In fact, indeed, sucks jobs away from America. What did Democrats say to that argument?
I think what Democrats are underscoring is the fact that this president ran on the economy. This president ran on bringing down inflation. This president ran on lowering the cost of groceries, gas, rent, and eggs on day one. Do you know what he posted this past weekend on his Truth Social, Sarah? He posted a message saying, "Shut up about the price of eggs." That's how much this president cares about the promises that he made to America's working families, to those exact voters who trusted him to take care about this number one issue. That's why you're seeing his poll numbers go down. That's why you're seeing that the majority of Americans don't think he's done enough to focus on inflation, the number one issue for them in the election, and the number one issue that they trusted him on. So all of this, I think, is going to come back and bite him politically, because it has been a huge betrayal of that one promise that he made to the American people. And what else are they saying? That he is fighting to make sure that he gets money to give his rich friends like Elon Musk and like the newly minted American oligarchy of billionaires, huge tax cuts, which is what we're seeing now play out in the budget negotiations. That's not going to go well for him or for Republicans going into the 2026 midterm elections.
I do want to talk about the fact that Canada made up just 0.2% of fentanyl seizures at the U.S. border last year. But the White House economic advisor has time and again, Kevin Hassett, said that this is a drug war, not a trade war. Is this an honest argument, Lee?
I think it's a very interesting reframe of the argument, because it's not just about Canada. We're also looking at Mexico. We're also looking at China, where there are significant issues with fentanyl. And many people had said there was no way that this was going to do anything on the fentanyl, and that there was this impossible to implement. And yet already we're seeing a huge shift in behavior in Mexico. So I do believe that, while it's not fair in its totality because of what, as you described, Canada, I do think that it's a fair assessment of what they're trying to do when it goes back to China, when it comes to Mexico, and we're seeing the impact of that already.
So why go after Canada, I guess, is the big question, who have been unequivocal in their fight against America. They literally can't believe that the people they thought were their closest allies and friends are now putting them in this position.
I can't explain why he's decided to go after Canada.
That was to Lee. Go ahead, Lee.
Oh, I can't explain why he's going after Canada, but I don't think this is all about one issue. We're not just talking about fentanyl, and we're not just talking about one thing. We're talking about fair trade across the board. And I think that, in that issue, when it comes to Canada, there are some things that he's bringing up that many people will say are worth discussing. Is it fair to treat them the same way that we're treating some of the other trade partners, which really are causing huge problems for us? I don't think so. And I don't think it's popular with American people. And it's certainly causing friction when you look at polling how Canadians are viewing Americans.
Maria, I want to talk about the shutdown that is 4 days away unless there is something passed. Republicans do or could go this alone. And we're hearing from John Fetterman saying, I am never going to vote for a government shutdown. What are Democrats going to do on all this?
I think we need to wait and see what Democratic senators are going to do on this, Sarah, which I think is going to be where the real decision making is going to have to be done. In the House, Republicans own it all. They can and should pass this House bill on their own, because they did nothing to bring Democrats to the table to negotiate and to try to come up with a bipartisan compromise, which is what should happen from the appropriations process. And that's what Democratic senators are hoping will happen ultimately in the Senate. There is a bipartisan effort still going on for appropriators to actually do what their job is, which is to come together, figure out the appropriations, and go through the process that is what is supposed to happen. Now, with all due respect to Senator Fetterman, he talked about how he will not shut down the government. And I think that's a good idea to have, and that's a good effort to have. Democrats do not want to shut down the government. He said that he will never do this because he's not going to, put the House on fire. But with all due respect to him, the House is already on fire. And the arsonists are Donald Trump and Elon Musk because of what they have injected into the economy, the uncertainty, firing so many people all at once, making sure that the benefits of whatever it is, the cost savings are going to go to the richest people in America. That is not something that Democrats believe is worth fighting for. And in fact, Democrats are going to focus on the message that they're the ones who have the backs of America's working class and America's working families.